Kenya has set an ambitious target of attracting about 5 million visitors by the year 2027. And we're talking about 4.5 years from now. And the question is, what strategies are in place to ensure that this number is achieved? This week on Inside Government, we're talking to the Principal Secretary in the State Department for Tourism. This is John Ololtua. Thank you very much indeed, Bwana PS, for finding time to be with us here. I mean, we are talking about less than 5 years from now, and the target is ambitious. I mean, 5 million visitors. What strategies are there to ensure that this number is achieved?
First and foremost, let me welcome you to the State Department for Tourism. And secondly, let me say I'm personally proud of KBC. You know, looking at the history of how it is a national broadcast and the work that they have done. You have asked a very important question, and you have asked that the ambition we have of 5 million tourists by 2027 may look very, very ambitious. First of all, it has to be ambitious, because for you to achieve, you must be ambitious. It is only people who are ambitious who will achieve. Let me just give you the statistics. I agree with you that it may look ambitious, because if you look at since independence up to now, we have hardly gone beyond 2 million. I think the highest we had was in 2019, where we had 2,048,834 tourist arrivals. And the number came down to 567,848 in 2020 because of the COVID-19. And of course, it kept on coming down. But in 2022, it went to 1.4 million and several thousands on top. But the reason why I'm saying, I'll come to the strategies later, the reason why the Cabinet Secretary and myself, together with my other colleagues, because we have the PS Culture, we have the PS Wildlife, and we have the PS Tourism, we are all under the Honorable Cabinet Secretary, Mheshimiwa Penina Malonza, of course, who is our Cabinet Secretary. So we are working, actually whatever I'm talking about, we are working as one with those state departments to be able to realize the numbers. If you look at just the half year, that is 2023, from January to June this year, we already have 925,927. That is an indication that by the end of the year, when we are doing the next analysis, we could be about 2 million. Yeah,
just doing the next analysis.
Yes, because if we normally do half, if you look at half, the one that we did in 2022 was 600,000. But you can see January 2023 to June 2023, we are already clocking 925,927. And those are international arrivals. We have not actually put the domestic tourists. And so therefore, if you look at that half year alone, it means that by the end of the year, we may be 1.7, 1.8, or even 2 million. So therefore, I want to begin by saying that it is achievable and it is possible. Now, let me come now to the strategies. First of all, before I come to the strategies, the Kenya Kwanza manifesto is very clear on what it wants done on tourism. And there are 3 key components. Number 1 is to nurture a tourism ecosystem that supports independent travel, particularly for the young people. So which means we really want to focus on the young people, the independent traveler. The second very, very important objective under the better agenda is diversify Kenya's tourism by promoting niche market products, notably adventure, sports, and cultural tourism, just to mention a few. And lastly, to diversify the source markets to include the African markets. Those are the key components of the Kenya Kwanza transformation agenda in relation to tourism. Now let me come to the strategies that we intend to employ to be able to achieve these numbers. The first one, first of all, is marketing. And marketing, tourism actually deals with marketing, projecting what you have. And we intend to really do marketing in very many ways. Number 1, we want to do digital marketing because we are in a modern world. Through the Kenya Tourism Board, we need to really capture ensure that all the attractions that we have in Kenya, all the programs that we have regarding tourism, including even our hotels and all the other facilities that we have in tourism, we want to project them digitally, either through social media, through TikTok, through whatever method, so that it becomes easy for people to be able to see what we have.
And how would this be done? Would it be some sort of public-private partnership, or this is going to be public sector driven?
It is both, because first of all, tourism is actually private sector driven. It's more of private sector driven than even public sector driven, because all the stakeholders that we have in the tourism industry are actually in the private sector. So this will be done both from the public perspective and also from the private perspective. And therefore, which means that we will partner, the Kenya Tourism Board will do it, that is our marketer. We will also make sure that the websites and all the, for the State Department for Tourism, the Ministry of Tourism, Wildlife and Heritage, and all the other state departments. And we even want to reach out to all the other state departments to also be able to include whatever attractions we have or programs that we have in tourism in their websites and their social networks and whatever that. So we want, first of all, to be our one government agenda so that the entire government is actually doing it. But we also want to reach out to the private sector. We have the Kenya Tourism Federation, which under it, of course, has so many agencies in the tourism sector. So I indicated that one of them is the digital marketing. Number two, we also want to tap in the human resource. Human resource is a critical component of any program that you have. We just realized that we have a rich kind of human resource in what we refer to as influencers. We have our actors, we have our sportsmen, we have our singers, the artists who sing, we have all these kinds of people who really can market the country. So we are reaching out to them, not necessarily because we are able to pay them, but we want to ask them as patriotic Kenyans that whatever they can be able to do to market the country, they can be able to do it. They can endorse it. For example, the athletes, they can speak about Kenya, they can carry the flag of Kenya high, they can talk about the attractions. So that's another area that we are targeting, to the brand ambassadors, the people that we can be able to use. Thirdly, under marketing, we also want to look at the opportunities we have. We have the Kenyan diaspora, all over the world. And we have also our missions, the missions abroad, the embassies and the Kenyan missions abroad, which of course have got, we have our ambassadors out there. They have staff. We may not have tourism attaches there, but the officers who are there within our Kenyan embassies abroad, we are already reaching out to them so that first and foremost they are able to promote the country through whatever forums they have, either through pamphlets or through digital material, digital content that we can be able to create through the Kenya Tourism Board and be able to forward to them so that they are able, to project the country. So one angle is the marketing, which is so wide, I may not really be able to look at it in terms of its totality. But one angle that we are going to use to promote tourism is the marketing element. Number three, we also want to build what we refer to as conference tourism, what we call that conferences, exhibitions, and so on. That's another area that we are targeting because we have just, you remember we just concluded the Africa Climate Summit, and we did a lot of refurbishment of KICC for it to have been able to really host that very important conference, the Africa Climate Summit. So we are working very closely with the guidance of His Excellency the President and our Cabinet Secretary, and of course the county governors. We are trying to project to see how we can be able to, one, strengthen the convention centers that we have already, like the KICC, and coming up with new ones like now the Bomas International Convention Center. And we even want to impress upon every governor that if we can have other convention centers at the county level, because when you have a convention, you are likely to attract international conferences, international meetings, And you are like...
And even regional meetings.
Yes, and even regional meetings. And once that is done, that is also a very important component of tourism.
And I like the fact that you have brought in the issue of mice. And Kenya, you know, has always been a big player, you know, in the mice business. I mean, we have always competed with the likes of South Africa, Egypt, Morocco. But now we're getting new competitors in the name of Rwanda.
Correct.
In the name of Ethiopia. Tanzania is also banking big on mice tourism. But when you look at Kenya, I mean, apart from Kenyatta International Convention Center, we are yet to develop a new modern conference center with modern amenities. Aren't we likely to lose the game to new players?
Thank you very much. And I agree with you that if we don't do a lot or if we don't move faster, we can easily, of course, lose out to those who are coming up with convention centers. But as I indicated to you, we have already started. KICC, we have done a lot and we are going to do it. The State Department for Culture, Bomas of Kenya, of course, is under the State Department for Culture. They have already put in place strategies to put up a modern convention center, as I indicated, with the guidance of His Excellency the President and the Cabinet Secretary. And we are calling upon the county governors to also come up with the convention centers at the county level. But we are also calling upon the private sector. You know, it's not just the government alone that will do the convention centers. We have very big hotels, that Radisson Blu, for example, and all other hotels that maybe have got enough space where they can put up those convention centers. They can also do. We're also looking at some of the hotels like Mombasa Beach, Ngulia, Safari Lodge, and others, which has got also maybe some big space of land and so on. There might be, it might be important in future to look at how maybe convention centers can be put up in such kind of facilities. So we are actually calling upon, apart from what the government can do, we are also really inviting the private sector, and particularly the hospitality industry, to be able to come up and put up those convention centers, because we will be able to give them whatever kind of support in terms of policy and whatever they need to do to be able to establish those convention centers. So really, we are up to the game, and we think that we can be able to do much better than what we have done now. When
you look at sessional paper number 1 of 2010 on tourism growth strategy, I mean, it was talking about, you know, diversifying the mice business away from Nairobi and to establish new conference centers in Mombasa, in Kisumu, and in Naivasha. But so far we haven't seen these happen. I mean, we are still counting on Kenyatta International Convention Center, which was opened back in 1975. And we have seen the entrance of new MICE centers, like the Kigali Convention Center, the Bole Convention Center in Ethiopia. And so when do we now plan to stop the talking and then we start the walking?
Thank you very much, Brian. Actually, we have stopped the talking and we have already started the walking. I indicated to you that we are already starting with the Bomas International Convention Center. That's already an indication. And we are targeting to look at which other area that requires that process of starting the convention center. Where we shall require public-private partnership, we will be able to engage in that angle. Where we shall require the county governments to really come in place and identify land for that, we will also be able to approach them to be able to do that. And therefore, our focus is to begin. And in fact, we are already beginning with the Bomas one. So that's an indication that we may not really keep on talking, but at least we will start off and move from there.
When do we plan to break grounds?
We're also looking at the review of the tourism policy and the tourism act. Of course, anything new that we want to bring must also be anchored under the law. So we are looking at how we can be able to ensure that we do a review of the tourism act and the tourism policy to be able to encompass or incorporate whatever that may not have been captured. The other area that we are looking at is product development. We really want to diversify the products. And in fact, we want to see whether we can get a 10 bucket list. Already, you know, we have a number of products that we are promoting. We have the beach, which is one of the products. We have the safari, which is, of course, the wildlife and so on. And then, of course, we have the mice, as I've indicated. But we want to try and go beyond that so that we look at what else is this that Kenya has that may not have been projected. For example, in agriculture, we can talk of agro-tourism. Is there something that we can be able to do so that we have people coming to see how we prepare our coffee, our tea, you know, how we plant, how we harvest, how we process, you know, including rice in this other side and so on. So we want to look at other forms of tourism, not just the traditional one. So we are looking at maybe agro-tourism. We want to look at medical tourism, how we can partner with the Ministry of Health to ensure that we have modern hospitals that can attract people to come for treatment in the country. And we want to go to other ventures like sports tourism. We want to go to adventure. We want to look at cultural tourism, how we even culinary tourism, all right? And all those other forms of tourism that may not have been, you know, projected. So we also want to look at what we can do, which is newer than what has always been there. And I'm very happy. Let me just give you two. Already, His Excellency the President has already commenced the process of Kenya as the origin of humanity or origin of humankind in Turkana. And that ecosystem of the Northern Corridor or that circuit, of course, once you put up that museum that will have all the archaeological studies and everything that about the origins of humankind, then you will build that circuit so that you have that museum. Then you will have, of course, the Chalbi Desert, where you'll introduce, you know, Dubai is actually getting tourists just because of the desert. So once we have that museum there, then you will have the Chalbi Desert, develop desert safaris and anything else that you can do there. You'll have the Samburu, the Camel Derby in Samburu. You'll have, of course, the Loyongalani Cultural Festival in Turkana. And then you'll have our national parks and game reserves around that area. So you'll build a whole ecosystem just based on that origin of humankind. Kenya is known for marathons, home of marathons or home of champions. That's also another concept that we can be able to build. So what I'm trying to say is that we want to identify new things that probably have not been there that can act as an anchor or a catalyst or an attraction.
When you look at tourism, I mean, the growth of tourism has always been very consistent, apart from you know, the COVID-19 era, and of course our times around elections, and the growth has always been at an annualized rate of about 10%. But every time we have elections, you know, we always record some drop in numbers. And that has always had a negative impact, you know, on the tourism numbers. And so how do we then plan to ensure that there's growth, there's predictability, and there's sustainability even during our electioneering time?
Tourism is normally affected by various factors. It could be political factors, it could be pandemics, it could be drought. So, and that's why we have what we call tourism resilience. Already we have a center at Kenyatta University that deals with the tourism resilience, just to look at how is it that we prepare ourselves. In fact, there was a committee that we need to reactivate on a multi-sectoral committee that deals with the tourism resilience. How do we respond to situations? How do we prepare the populace to be ready of any eventuality that comes? So maybe, first of all, we need to look at the various structures that are there. We must strengthen the the Tourism Resilience Center at Kenyatta University. We must also look at the committee that is supposed to look at issues on tourism resilience as number two. And number three, of course, is the communication strategy, to be able to always prepare people and project whatever is likely to happen, and to communicate and to partner with our partners and other countries across the world, so that, first of all, we give them the real situation on the ground. Sometimes our country is affected in one way or another. For example, whenever there is some kind of instability or perceived instability, and when the world just sees some communication somewhere, they take it that way. So we must be proactive in finding a way of always communicating to the world what is there, so that they get to know the truth of the matter. So we have to look at the communication strategy on how to really project it. And I'm sure if we do that, we will be able to reduce such kind of cases. We also are strengthening the issue of security and safety, because everybody would be happy to go to a country that's safe. We have the Tourism Protection Service, which has been created by the Executive Order number 1 of 2023. And the Tourism Protection Service is actually the tourism police. We have a tourism police unit, so that we have tourists that are basically trained to be able to handle tourists. We're just about, the Cabinet Secretary is just about to sign an MOU with the Inspector General of Police on the Tourism Protection Service, so that we are able to assist that unit with vehicles and other equipment, and training for them to be able to understand how to handle the tourists, how to communicate on security issues, and anything that needs to be communicated. So I believe that if we employ all these strategies and have everybody in government and outside government speaking positively about our country. I also want to encourage the media. You know, I'm sure you are part of the media, to also try as much as possible every time to project the country in a very positive way, so that we speak more of what is positive and less of maybe what is not positive.
You know, it's not just the assignment of one agency in the name of Kenya Tourism Board. Yeah. It is not only the assignment of the Ministry of Tourism Wildlife. I mean, it calls for a collective responsibility among all Kenyans to become better brand ambassadors of this country. So how are you entrenching that culture, you know, of becoming better brand ambassadors for this country?
We are trying to entrench that, first of all, through stakeholder engagement. We are already doing a lot of stakeholder engagement, first of all with the tourism sector itself, you know, the Kenya Tourism Federation and all the bodies that fall under it. We're also reaching out to all the principal secretaries, and my PCS is also reaching out to all the cabinet secretaries, so that we are really engaging them to understand what we are doing on the tourism sector, so that whenever they have programs, they have international visitors, they have investment conferences. Like the other day we had you know, visitors from Saudi Arabia and other countries coming for investment conferences. We are really trying to make sure that we are reaching out to them, so that they incorporate the tourism sector in every plan that they have, so that we are able to really bring that kind of ownership. We also want to really partner with the county governments, because they are very critical stakeholders. Actually, most of the touristic activities or attractions are in the counties. You talk about the national parks, the game reserves, the museums, even our archives, historical sites, and so on. Even the training camps for our athletes and so on, they are all basically in the counties. So through the Council of Governors, we are also reaching out to them through stakeholder meetings with them, so that we are able to interact with them and they understand what tourism is all about, so that we have this kind of ownership. We are also happy that if we can be able to partner with you, with the media stations, so that we can have talk shows, we can have programs that target the community, so that the community begins to understand. And I indicated by saying that we must also see how the community can see the importance of tourism to them, so that they can be able to own it, and therefore it becomes easy for them to be able to market. So those are some of the strategies that we are putting in place, that we think if we continue, then we are likely to achieve.
Before we come to the end of this interview, I mean, when you look at tourism in the next 3-5 years, what will shape, number one, what will shape or what will drive growth? And number two, how do we plan to sustain this growth going forward?
If you look into the future, first of all, what must sustain this growth is that we must be able to focus the youth and the emerging trends of the world. So we must look at, what is this that drives people? Adventure is changing. People maybe used to like to go to the national parks or game reserves and so on, and the beaches. But if you look at the young people, and as time changes, they might be interested in city life, theaters, cinemas, and many other things. So first of all, we must be able to do a lot of research on the changing trends of the world. And what is this that can act as an attraction? Is it really the elephant and the buffalo that will continue to be an attraction? Yes, it will continue. But we must do some research and understand the changing trends so that, one, we capture the adventurous spirit and the attractions that the young people and the modern people may be attracted to. Because if we do that, then there is a likelihood of us protecting the future of tourism. Number two, we must also invest a lot in infrastructure. I believe it's very important to invest a lot in infrastructure, whether it is convention centers, whether it is roads, whether it is ICT, fiber, optic and so on. We must be able to invest in infrastructure. And number three, as I indicated earlier, we must be able to identify what is totally unique about Kenya and project it, including our culture. Remember the other day we had the Ma Culture Week in Narok, which is going to be rotational. I'm seeing the Kenyan culture as a very important attraction in the future if we build on it and we expand on it and see what we can do. But above all, we must also protect the environment. The Africa Climate Summit, I think, was an eye-opener. If we don't protect our environment, then we are not going to talk about tourism in future. So there must be a lot of investment in terms of protecting the environment, but above all, ownership. We need to own it. I was telling my colleague PSS, actually, there is no state department which has no tourism in it. If you talk about investment, when investors come, there are those who will come and invest in, travel, maybe travel sector and so on. So really, we need to own it, all of us, and be able to project it in the best way that we can.
Yes, thank you very much indeed for your time and, of course, for your insight in matters tourism.
Thank you very much.
Your time is highly appreciated.
Thank you very much.
Very good. John Ololtua is the Principal Secretary in the State Department for Tourism, joining us on this week's episode of Inside the Government, helping us to understand what the ministry and what the government is doing in partnership with the private sector to drive tourism numbers in this country. My name is O'Brien Kimani. You definitely know that this is Inside Government. Thank you for watching and have yourself a good afternoon.